La-da-dee, la-da-doo, la-da-dum. Ladies and gentlemen, it's been a while since the last video, but I think you're all used to this, especially when I don't make a video for a year. Basically, the video is done. I just need to get the last clip. Like, when I make a video, I record, like, what the last clip of the previous video was. I find the first clip to the next video, and then the final clip to the next video. That video is basically done. I just need to get that final clip, which will hopefully be soon. Don't know when, but it's an RNG-based thing, basically, so it might happen tomorrow, and I'll get the video out as soon as I can. Today, I want to talk about a bit of a controversial topic, which is the Jagex PvP dev blog that was put out recently on what I believe was the attempt of 93 Mage. The attempt of Jagex and some invited content creators from different areas, just content creators just from dotted all over, basically, on attempts, I think, to revive PvP in the wilderness. And as you can tell by my title, the reason why I say controversial is because, in all honesty, I personally, sorry, I wasn't even looking at the screen, I personally don't really think that it is possible to revive the wilderness of PvP without detrimental changes to the entire game. We're going to get into more detail on what I mean, but before I go on, I did read the dev blog, and I'll be transparent and say that I didn't read the entire thing, because a lot of it I really just don't care for. Things like skull tricking, gear nerfs, none of that, I can't bother reading any of that. I've never been skull tricked in my life. I've played for 18 years. It doesn't interest me. But I did read the Singles Plus one. The Singles Plus one is one that I really wish was in the game a while ago. But unfortunately, I can't look at that one from an unbiased opinion. I have to look at that update as biased, because no one really knows what will happen if Singles Plus is added to the game. We really just don't know the effects it's going to have on what's currently in the game and what's going to happen. That update for me is great. I love it, but it's biased. Very biased that I like it. And I don't know the effects of putting something like that in the game. All I know is that if I did want to go PvP, I can have a fight and comfortably fight someone in a fair fight and just see how the fight ends up. I either get beaten by the better player, or I beat the player and maybe I'm the better player in that. And I love that. I love those fair 1v1 fights, basically, not to the death, but just without interruption, where it's just fair. I like that stuff. It's always been great. But that update, again, I don't know if it's a good thing. I don't know if it's a bad thing. I'm neutral on it, but my opinion of it is unfortunately biased. So we will stay neutral on that for this video. It's something else I want to talk about really in this video. The true reason why I believe the wilderness can't be revived. And a great way before I start this video is I'm going to ask you a question. Hypothetical, you don't have to answer the question. Just think about it for 2 seconds. What if Jagex had actually implemented all of those changes to the wilderness right now, and they just hadn't told anyone? Would you go PvPing? No. What really changes? What really has just changed? A few things have changed, but it's not going to suddenly have every guy in the game that's not playing, let's just say, Iron Man, whip out their mains and go pull on gear and go PKing. It's really not, because there's still not really any incentive to go PKing, apart from the actual just having fun. But a lot of people these days might want to work on their Iron Man or do something like a raid instead of going PvP. So the way we begin is we're going to be rewinding the clocks back to 2006 and 7. Basically, let's just say around when God Wars Dungeon was in the game, and why PvP back then was so popular before the wilderness was removed. Now, the reason for that is because of incentive, in my opinion. Back in the day, in 2006 and 7, PKing was a profitable activity. Items had value. Dragon daggers, super poisoned, was 60k a pop. Dragon longswords were 100k. Dragon simmies were going for 110k. Rune plate legs were like 80k. Full rune sets of kites were 250k. Glory armies were 100k. 120k with 4 charges. And if you were that guy, or you were PKing and a guy had an obsidian cape on, oh baby, that was 300k right there. PKing was profitable. So you could have fun PKing and also make a lot of money. Now, you can do that in this day and age. But another thing back in 2006 is the fact that nobody was really that good at the game, which means that the entire PvP scene in every aspect basically was on even grounds. Because nowadays, if you want to go learn PvP, you're walking into what would be known as the lambs to the slaughter. Because the people that are PvPing right now, they are all very, very good. And you're going to die many, 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 many times learning the basics compared to these other people. And it depends if you have that motivation to do that nowadays with everything else in the game compared to back then. Because back then, if we're going to rewind to God Wars Dungeon was like maybe the most exciting thing to do. But if you had a pure, obviously you'd still be PKing and you're pure. You don't have a main or any of that stuff. But at the end of the day, if you wanted to make money on RuneScape, what would you do back in 2007 to make money? What was the best money in the game back then? Not including things like merching or staking. The best money in the game was double nature runes. At 91 rune crafting, you could runecraft double nature runes. For a pure essence with 100 gold, you'd runecraft 2 nature runes, which fluctuated between 300 and 400 each. I think about 300, because they'd always go off the U longbow prize. However, no one in the NAN has time to get 91 rune crafting, let's be real. No one back then. If you did, you're a nerd, I'm sorry. So what are the other money-making methods you can do? And let's just say you go PVMing. So you go kill General Grador with a couple of people, let's just say, and you spend 5 hours killing Grador, and you don't get any drops. How much money did you make? You probably made about maybe 500k, 100k an hour maybe, let's just say. Not really that good. You know, you could pick Flax for the same money. Flax was 100k an hour back in the day, so why would you not just do that instead? It's easier. Because you're not killing General Grador for this 100k an hour. You go to Grador the next day and kill it for 5 hours, you get a Bandos hilt drop. That's why you're there. Now, when you sell this Bandos hilt, you've been at General Grador for a total of 10 hours, and a hilt back then was 40 mil. So now you've made, let's say, 13 mil from this hilt in 10 hours. You've now made 1.3 mil an hour. Add the 100Ks on top. Let's just call it 13 mil you've made in 10 hours. That's more than double runecrafting nature runes. So that's a great money maker. But there's no guarantee you'd get that Bandos hilt. Which means if you didn't, you'd now still be on the 100k an hour. Nature runes would completely destroy the profit margin, but you could eventually will get that Bandos hilt. That is why you were at Grador. You're not there for the drop. The consistent drops, the cash stacks. You're not there for that. You're there for the big drop. However, if you wanted to make some quick cash, you didn't have things like 91 runecrafting, what were the alternative money makers back in the day that would actually be that cash that's not PKing? And an answer to that is green dragons. Notoriously one of the most known money making methods forever, except for now, which we'll come to. Green dragons back in the day, if you killed one, you get a dragon bone worth 3,000 gold, and you get a green D-hide worth 1.5k. 4.5k every single dragon you kill, and they are very, very easy to kill. So you'd go put on some decent gear, not your best, and make sure you had 4 items so you could protect the item that you had, and you go in the wilderness and kill some green dragons. And now you're not making 100k an hour, you're making like 300k an hour. And after you do it for 10 hours, you've made 3 mil. Guaranteed. And a great argument, before I get into a bit more detail, nowadays is how to not revive the wilderness is apparently to not lure people into the wilderness. Not force them into the wilderness. Nobody back in 2006 or 7 was forced to kill green dragons. It was just the best money in the game, or some of the best money in the game, that was consistent. Now, there would be some people, which may be you, who would know that people are doing that. So now you would go to East and West Dragons back in 2006 and 7, which were very, very popular PK areas. And you would find people on almost every single world because they were doing the same as you, trying to kill the guy killing the green dragon. And you found a PK and you attack him and then you kill him and you're better than him. And then the teams get involved. And that's how the food chain was created back then. But nobody was forced to kill those green dragons. So it's not forcing people into the wilderness back then. It was just people wanted to make that quick cash killing green dragons rather than killing something like General Grador to get that payout that they would get after a fair few hours. That does it all. And then things like Edgeville Wilderness was just the fair one-on-one fights because of profitable PK. And you kill a guy. Edgeville was 1v1. You had to be better than your opponent. If you didn't make money, it means your opponents were better. And you'd get better. And eventually you'd be making money. That's just how it goes. D-Simmies were 100k back then. Obby Capes 300k. Glory's 100k. You kill a guy with a combat bracelet and a Glory Army and a Rune Simi. That was like a 240k PK right now. And that would buy you a lot of stuff. Let's say you killed 3 of those guys an hour and died once. You know, you're still making money. And you're getting better as you do it. And everyone's on an even playing field. So no one is disgustingly good like nowadays. Nowadays, you could go high-risk venge for your fighting. You would lose a lot of money before you even work out how to kill anybody. Because people don't really make PK videos anymore. You can't study these PK videos to get better. There are some out there. They're not extinct. They are not just completely discontinued. But they're also not very popular compared to like Iron Man progression videos and all these new series that come out. You know, there's the PK videos of just watching people like G-Maul, but I don't know. I don't think you can learn too much from those, but there's actually more. There's quite a lot, actually, now I think about it, but I don't know how much you can learn from those, to be honest. I don't really do much 1v1ing and PvP worlds, so I don't know about that one, but yeah, there's that. PK videos, basically what I'm trying to say, back in the day were the most popular thing in the world, bro. You know, when the new Kids Range video came out, everyone was just buzzing, bro. Everyone was so happy. Nowadays, when the new Settled video comes out, you know, everyone's buzzing. That's just how it goes these days. But that was basically the bottom line point where I want to switch to why I don't think it can be done. Because back in the day, PKing was profitable if you were okay at it, which is fine. It's the same today, but now it's obviously so much harder that it can't really be there. But also item prices are drastically lower. PKing is profitable nowadays when people risk more. You know, people have to purposely take more risk to make it more profitable. That's just how it goes. Now it becomes high risk, high reward. But back then, they didn't have to take much. All you needed was a guy with a dragon dagger, and that was a 60k PK there. You could PK 20 of them in a day and die 0 times, let's just say, if you're a beast. That's 1.2 mil. Nice. And then you rebuy some supplies. Profited. Brilliant. However, nowadays, green dragons in the wilderness. Why would anyone ever go to green dragons in the wilderness? You wouldn't. We have other things, you know? We've got things like Venenatis, Callisto, the demi-bosses and all that. So why do we go to those? And this is where you could argue that people are forced into the wilderness, because there's only one way to get an Odium Ward. There's only one way to get a Malediction Ward. There's only one way to get a Treasonous Ring, and it's in the wilderness. So that's an arguable point to why people could be being forced into the wilderness with the current things that have been done in the game. However, even then, whatever these were, why would you kill those bosses when you could go and kill something like Zulrah instead? And at Zulrah, you can wear your best gear. You can kill as many as you want. There's no player that can kill you. And if you die, you just pay 100k and get all of your items back. And Zulrah drops some very, very good items. You'd always do that. That's why Zulrah's been so popular all this time. Zulrah's drop table's been nerfed multiple times. And this brings me to a point that I really, really like, which is the whole concept of how I think this cannot be revived to the point where the wilderness is booming again. This is a saying I read on Twitter, and it was something along the lines of, if Zulrah's drop table, the very first drop table that was in the game, extremely broken. If the drop table of Zulrah now, in 2021, was nerfed to only Zulrah dropping scales on drop and the 3 uniques on its current drop table, it would be more GP an hour now than it was when it was first released. Now, a lot of people might just think that's ridiculous, myself included when I read that. Because if you kill it when it released, you get all the other drops anyway, but then obviously you're going to get these uniques that Zulrah drops as well. So it's just going to be a bonus. But that's where it changes. Because now if I kill Zulrah in this 2021, it'll take me, if I kill it for 10 hours and don't get anything, I haven't really made much money at all. I've now made 100k an hour, let's just say. Back in the day, I could pick flax for that. But then if I kill it for another 10 hours, or 5 hours, and then I get this Tanzanite Fang drop, how much is this Tanzanite Fang drop now worth when people are only killing Zulrah for this Tanz Fang and not for the consistent drops that it drops? Only Iron Men, in my opinion, are actually killing Zulrah actively to try and get the uniques. Everyone else is killing it just for the drops that Zulrah gives, and the uniques are a little bonus payout. They're worth a few mil each. If Zulrah didn't drop those, people wouldn't kill Zulrah as much, because you'd only be farming for the big weapon, which means the supply of them would be kind of gone. But obviously then the price goes up, so it changes back to the point where nowadays, if the blowpipe was the only thing Zulrah dropped, it would be worth hundreds of millions of gold. And if it takes you, let's just say, 50 hours to get one, on average, you'd still be making, like, potentially 2+ mil an hour killing it. But you're not getting constant money killing Zulrah anymore. You're only getting a scales drop every time until you get the payout. Similar to the General Grotto concept from 2007. So, you ask yourself the question, what if you want to get the quick cash, which back in the day was the green dragons? Because you don't want to runecraft runes and General Grotto ain't dropping your hill. You don't want to get the Serpent or the Tanzanite Fang. So what do you kill nowadays? You'd kill something like Vorkath. You'd kill something like Demonic Gorillas, maybe. Or Hydra. All of these monsters, they drop a lot of money every kill you do. Some obviously, like the Gorillas, can drop something worse. But they have consistent money, and their uniques just boost it slightly. But if you took all these items off and they only drop the uniques would be worth so much more. Because nobody would really be killing them at the current prices of the uniques if it was the only thing dropped. The prices would average out. And if you don't realize what I'm trying to say when I say this, is if you could kill, or let's just say Vorkath Zulrah with like nerfed right now to those things, would you go and kill Nightmare instead? Why not? Because Nightmare doesn't drop anything. It drops shit. Nightmare doesn't make you any money unless you get the big payout. Which is why Nightmare, even though I think on average Nightmare's some of the best money in the game long term, in the short term it's not. You don't make anything. You have to commit time there. So the game is now about making this consistent money in a short period of time. But back in 2006, if you wanted to take that route, there were things like green dragons, which are in the wilderness, which would be a very, very, if not the most popular thing then. Nowadays, the most popular thing is Zulrah and Vorkath. That's what people always recommend if you need to make some money. They'll always just say Zulrah and Vorkath. They print money. So, what I wanted to go back to with the title of when I say that the wilderness can't be revived without detrimental changes, the only way to revive the wilderness is to have the monsters in the wilderness or any PVM-related activity in the wilderness, something that's dropping consistent payouts. Because then you're not forced to kill it. You can go and kill the other thing and make the money in the long term. You just need some short-term cash because you might have a level of greed, and you risk the wilderness to do it. And if you don't believe me on that one either, look at the Revenant Cave. That was the most popular PK area in the game. If not basically the only area people would PK because it was so much money. It's an exact example. It was just unfortunately abused to points where we don't really know how to fix it. So it's like if Zulrah, Vorkath, and Hydra and everything was nerfed right now to the ground, ignoring all the other effects to the game for now, but the old Revenants were added in the same update, that would now be the best cash in the game. It would be extremely competitive, and the wilderness would be booming on every single world, as it was. Now, let's say the green dragons in the wildy back in 2006 is about 5 spots to kill those, but they're all the same. What if all the bosses in the wilderness that are dotted around had drop tables that were like Zulrah now, like Vorkath now, like Hydra, anything that just drops a lot of money? But those monsters I just mentioned that are completely safe to kill did not have those drop tables. Instead, they didn't drop anything that was really that good, except when you get the unique item. Now, obviously, Vorkath has garbage items, so I would say right now, let's say Vorkath, you take all the drops off. Would you kill Vorkath anymore? Yes, you would. Why? For the assembler. You need it. But then after the assembler, yeah, it'd be dead content. So that one's a bit more of a complicated situation. However, let's say we did the same to Zulrah. Zulrah, you removed all of the drops. Would you kill it? There is no one in the game that could tell me Zulrah would ever be dead content if the blowpipe was on its drop table forever, which it will be. The blowpipe is one of the most powerful weapons in the entire game. So you can do whatever you want to Zulrah and leave the blowpipe on the drop table, and it's never going to be dead content. It will always have value, and the value of that blowpipe will always scale to what the game is willing to pay for it, which I think if most people would be hundreds of millions. It's just the fact there's so many of them in the game now, it doesn't work. So then it all comes down to a potential, once again, detrimental change. Do you just wipe them all out the game and then update Zulrah on the spot? The price of them would be in the billions, which makes that popular area. And that's just how it goes. That's an idea that, again, these aren't really ideas. These are just the hypothetical conversation to why I don't think it can be done. Because another way to see it is, let's say the Rev Cave in the wilderness, let's say there was lots of these Rev Caves and they were smaller, but they were dotted all over the place, like 3 or 4 of them or 5. And then there was no monster outside of the wilderness that dropped like cash drops or these mahogany planks or these crazy supplies that are 100k each on the Grand Exchange. You would potentially, if you wanted to make quick cash, you would go to the Rev Cave to try and do it. And now you're in the wilderness. But were you forced there? You were not forced into the wilderness. You just want the quick cash. So in my opinion, while the drop tables of everything in the safe game, everything outside, minus raids, leave them be. Raids should be the best cash in the game in my opinion. But everything else, with these unique drops, but they're killed not for the uniques, as long as they exist in the game, and as long as the risk is basically 0, so you can kill these in max gear, no one's going to the wilderness. But the only way to fix that without nerfing everything is to add something to the wilderness that pays out so much more that it might be worth it. And even then, how much does that have to be? If right now you needed some money in the game and there's a monster in the wilderness that had an average drop of 2 million gold and you could kill it, was there, would you go and do it? I would. If I wasn't playing Hardcore Iron Man, I would definitely try and do that because everything else in the game is so inferior. It's by far the best thing that it's worth the risk. So now I'm in the wilderness. Oh, wait, hold up. I'm dying. Oh, I almost died there. Oh, Jesus. I'm okay. Don't worry. Oh, man, I was like a seed in my throat from something I must have eaten earlier. But no, that's like my bottom line point. There are so many small things right now that combine that makes PvP dead. That if these updates in that dev blog were added to the game right now, I don't think it would do anything. I really don't think it would do anything major anyway. So what I'm not saying is everything that I've previously said should be done. I'm just saying the reason why the wilderness can't be revived is because that's probably what has to be done to revive the wilderness. But what are the effects on the game if you were to genuinely do something like that? No one knows. It could destroy the game for all we know. Is it worth the risk for Jagex for such a small like thing or aspect? I don't know what's going on behind the scenes at RuneScape right now, but I really could not see them wanting to risk something so dangerous like that. It would be a scary thing. But that, in my opinion, is the bottom line rule. I think while you can just farm bosses outside of the wilderness completely safe for some of the best money in the game, there is no reason to go into the wilderness because everything there is inferior and the risk is just slightly higher. But if these bosses were changed where they would drop things like the Nightmare does, where you kill the Nightmare 100 times and get trash and then kill it the 101st time and suddenly you've made 3 mil an hour. But in the wilderness, you can kill a boss 10 times and you've got 3 mil, let's just say. So it's kind of guaranteed. You kind of pick and choose. What do you want to do? Do you want to use your best gear in the game with the low risk one to get what will be money in the long term, not guaranteed? Or do you go risk this wilderness to try and get the fast money? Because of the situation, you're not forced into the wilderness. If it's the consistent best GP in the game on some efficiency thing, then again, you're just trying to be efficient. But you're still just not forced there. There's always the backups. Because that's one thing that I think a lot of people don't want to see, is this is all the food chain in the wilderness. But they always say that forcing people doesn't work. And I agree with that. But that's why the drop tables of monsters outside the wilderness should not be printing money. The drop tables of monsters in the wilderness should be printing money. To a level where, again, I don't know how badly it can be abused. It's just the only way to do it. And I think the Rev Caves, what they previously were, is a perfect example of where I'm coming from. Because even with these broken drop tables in the safe game, the Rev Caves were still packed. On every single world, you'd find someone. Everywhere now in the wilderness, you don't find anyone anywhere, really. Black Chin Chompers, maybe. You might find the odd guy at Venenatis. But you have to hop a lot of worlds to do it. The Rev Cave, everyone was there. So if all the monsters outside weren't really just printing money, and the monsters in the wilderness would probably be thriving on every single world. But I think those changes are far too detrimental to be added to the game. And that's why, again, my controversial opinion is I don't think the wilderness can ever be revived. Disclaimer, I'm not suggesting this. This is just, again, why I think it can't be done. It's been in the game for 5 years now, these things and everything going on. That's why it's slowly deteriorated over time. But it's not the only thing. There's a few things as well, but these are different. Skill ceiling in PKing. It's definitely a big barrier to entry. Like an incredible barrier to entry to PvP. Insanely big one. That's there. That'll be there forever. There's nothing you can do about that. It literally is just there forever. But other than that, I don't really know. That's just my thoughts. I just think there's no reason to ever go in the wildy. And in all honesty, there never will be unless they add a monster that drops ridiculous gold per hour. Which, again, we don't know the detrimental effect of something like that being in the game. But I would like to see how that goes. It's a scary one to think about. Imagine you wake up the next day and suddenly every boss in the game, like Rune Dragons, like just don't exist anymore. Like there's no way to get easy money anymore. Runecrafting double nats is suddenly the best cash in the game again. Imagine that, bro. I don't know how I'd feel. I probably won't be interested in playing too much. You know, it's a really, really hard one to think about going back to how inefficient it would be after being used to all this efficiency. At the end of the day, you have to make sure you're just still playing the game, you know? If you're just playing the clock, trying to get everything done as fast as possible, are you actually playing RuneScape at this point, or are you just trying to get shit done, you know? Like, I play RuneScape efficiently, but I know I'm still playing the game. I just play it the way I want to, really. But no, that's my thoughts anyway. I'll read some comments. Again, try and keep the comment section like a little I know it's going to be so insanely hostile. I just hope you guys realize that I'm trying to be neutral and unbiased when I say these things. I don't think I want to see this in the game. It's just like my title says, I don't think it can be revived unless you want to go down this path. And going down that path is just far too terrifying to think about what could potentially happen. So that's that. Other than that, I'll try and get another Hardcore Iron Man video out pretty soon. We'll see how it goes. But again, bottom line rule, there needs to be an incentive to enter the wilderness, but an incentive where you're not forced to go into the wilderness. Just something that's insanely good to do. And I think the best way to see it is just look at drop tables outside the wilderness and look at like Rev Caves in the wildy. See how they worked. They definitely worked. It was just abused, but it did get people in the wildy and it did get PvP active for the while. So yeah. Anyways, I'll leave it down, guys. I'll read some comments. I'm curious to see what other people think, but that's kind of one where I'm thinking outside the box. I'll see you in the next hardcore video, I guess. So have a good one.